A photojournalist caught what Universal Pictures had been trying to conceal for decades on July 15, 1974. The image depicts the actual events of the beach attack incident. 2 viewers began vomiting and 13 people fainted during the test viewing. 1 crew member retained the proof, but the studio panicked and buried the video. When it first came to light in 2018, cinematic experts were astounded. It has nothing to do with the mechanical shark. The footage they captured that day was too realistic for viewers. Everything began by accident. Hollywood producers David Brown and Richard Zanuck discovered a story in 1973 that would alter everything. A copy of Cosmopolitan magazine, edited by his wife Helen, was picked up by Brown. A little card with a description of the unreleased book Jaws was enclosed. "Might make a good movie," the last phrase said. That little line was sufficient. Zanuck heard it from Brown. In a single night, they both read the manuscript. They were unable to quit discussing it the following morning. It was the most thrilling story they had ever read, they believed. They made the quick decision to purchase the rights. Brown later acknowledged that they went too quickly. They could have understood how difficult it would be to adapt the book into a movie if they had read it again. However, it was already too late. They were all on board. They were supported by Universal Pictures. Even before the publication of the book, the studio paid $175,000 for the rights. In today's currency, that is more than $1.2 million. The risk was enormous. They only had 2 enthusiastic producers and an intriguing story. However, the timing was right. The book was a huge smash when it was released in February 1974. The hardcover remained on lists of bestsellers. 44 weeks. Millions of copies of the paperback were sold. Universal would have been in a bidding battle if they had waited. Rather, they purchased it at a low cost. Finding the proper director was the more difficult aspect. The Sugarland Express has just been completed by Steven Spielberg. At just 26, he was young and already bound by a contract. However, he had no desire to play Jaws. He was afraid it would catch him. He made Duel a few years ago. A film about a vehicle pursuing a man. Another tale of a predator. He was afraid he would be called the shark guy. He made an attempt to go. He even watched other movies. Lucky Lady was the name of one. However, Universal refused to release him. They knew what he could do, and he was still bound by his contract. He complied with their instructions to stay. The casting process was chaotic. Spielberg intended Hooper to be played by Jon Voight. However, Richard Dreyfuss ultimately assumed the part. He unexpectedly contacted Spielberg on January 3, 1974. He chose to join because he was dissatisfied with his own work during Duddy Kravitz's apprenticeship. Filming would begin in 4 months. Spielberg preferred Sterling Hayden or Lee Marvin for Quint. They both said no. Robert Shaw was given the part in this way. He was spot on. However, he and Dreyfuss were at odds all the time on set. Shaw had too much to drink. Dreyfuss was arrogant. They irritated one another. Nevertheless, the tension from their personal lives gave their moments a unique quality. It all seemed hurried. Universal sought to capitalize on the popularity of the novel. They pushed the movie along. In 1974, Spielberg began filming on May 2. The screenplay was not completed. The mechanical sharks were ineffective. Between $3.5 million and $9 million, the budget skyrocketed. The timetable was extended from 55 to 159 days. Spielberg is only 26 years old. Felt the strain. Still worried about being confined. He desired to leave. But he was calmed down by producer David Brown. He assured Spielberg that he could create anything after Jaws was finished. He continued because of that pledge. Spielberg wanted more than just terror. And he wanted to laugh. Jaws wasn't a strictly scary movie in his opinion. A dismal chase in the sea was not what he wanted. He desired genuine characters, genuine conflict, and humorous moments. He called Carl Gottlieb for assistance. The Odd Couple was written by Gottlieb, a comedy writer. Spielberg sent him the script on April 3, 1974. In response, Gottlieb sent back 3 pages of recommendations. Spielberg thought it was fantastic. He showed the producers the notes. The 4 of them gathered at the Hotel Bel Air a few days later. By the next week, Gottlieb and Spielberg were on a plane bound for Boston. Spielberg had a more ambitious concept, although he was meant to assist in casting locals. He required assistance in correcting the script. Gottlieb went to work right away. His attention was on character. He gave them a human touch. He made one of his most well-known touches during a scenario involving meals. Quint, Hooper, and Brody begin contrasting scars. Gottlieb's late-night dinners with the cast were the source of that occasion. They made it up as they went along. The shark continued to disintegrate. It hardly functioned. The actors were therefore given more credit in the movie. The scenes were carried by their conversation. The line, "A larger boat will be required." The script didn't even mention it. It became legendary despite being made up on the fly. The function of Gottlieb expanded rapidly. Starting on April 27, he was employed for a 1-week rewrite. He spent 9 weeks there. He ate dinner with Spielberg and the actors every night. They discussed the next scenes to be filmed. Those meals inspired ideas. On the spot, lines were written. The affair was removed from the book, which was one significant modification. Gottlieb saw the actors together and realized it wouldn't work, even if Brody's wife has a liaison with Hooper in the book. "We won't let her cuckold Brody with this dweeb," he declared. Thus, the affair ended. He revised Hooper as well. Richard Dreyfuss was the focal point of his character development. In several respects, Hooper replaced Spielberg as an outsider who was intelligent, inquisitive, and a little uncomfortable. The film gained heart from that modification. A youthful and resolute Steven Spielberg was standing on the Atlantic Ocean's edge on May 2, 1974. He had previously only directed one feature picture, but this time he had a more ambitious plan. Spielberg took a risk. Instead of inside a studio tank, he decided to do Jaws out at sea. Everyone told him not to. Spielberg felt that the only way to make it feel alive was to have genuine water, real skies, and real movement, a notion that the studios detested. Martha's Vineyard was chosen by the group as the site of their conflict. Although it appeared serene and lovely, it was a nightmare to shoot in. They required a location that was both shallow enough to anchor equipment and deep enough for the mechanical shark to swim in order for it to function. They chose a strange area that was only 30 feet deep and 10 to 12 miles offshore. Later, Spielberg referred to it as the worst location on Earth for filming. Their schedule didn't matter to nature. Every hour, the sea's mood shifted. They were prepared to roll at one point. The boats would be forced out of alignment by the next change in the current. In order to restart the entire arrangement, crews had to stop everything. The sun had moved by then. The shots were damaged. They only received 2 usable takes on certain days. The staff and actors were unhappy. Their skin was burnt by the sun. They were sickened by the churning waves. Everyone was worn out. Then there were the inhabitants. They were initially thrilled to see Hollywood in the area. However, their patience wore thin as the delays continued. Even fish guts were thrown at Spielberg's rental home one evening. Then came the mechanical sharks, dubbed Bruce after Spielberg's attorney, which were not actual sharks. 3 of them, 2 to film from different angles and 1 for swimming on a track, were constructed by production designer Joe Alves. At almost 25 feet each, they were enormous. Spielberg had hoped that the film would be saved. Rather, they almost sank it. It sank the first time they dropped one into the sea. All the way to the bottom. It had to be fished out by divers. Things only got worse from there. The equipment was corroded by salt water. The rubber skin twisted and absorbed water. The movements became strange and choppy. The shark appeared dangerous one day. The next, it resembled a toy that had been shattered by a child. Spielberg was incensed. He yelled, "I want to kill this shark," at one point. Hours were spent by the staff fixing the animals. On certain days, they were completely unable to shoot anything. Parts continued to fall away. Divers occasionally had to drag entire sharks back up after they vanished beneath the sea. Panic gripped everyone. The spending plan was blowing up. The schedule was no exception. The film was expected to be completed in 55 days and cost $3.5 million. That was the strategy. They were already $2 million over just 2 months. Their delay was 49 days. The shooting continued until October 6. Day 159 was that day. Spielberg believed his career was ended when the final budget came to between $9 and $12 million. Executives at the studio were frightened. Members of the crew began making fun of the entire endeavor. Some were sporting t-shirts that said, "Spielberg 0, Shark 1." Some dubbed the film flaws. Spielberg slipped from the site on the last day because he was so afraid of being tossed into the ocean. Then took an early flight back to LA. On the boat, however, another struggle was taking place. Richard Dreyfuss, who portrayed Hooper, and actor Robert Shaw, who portrayed Quint, were at odds. Shaw was a dedicated method actor who was old school. Dreyfuss was nervous, younger, and more laid back. Shaw would continuously make fun of his performance and call him derogatory names. At one point, he took Dreyfuss by the throat. He threw a fire extinguisher at him once more. Shaw was also a heavy drinker. He was too inebriated one evening to record the major USS Indianapolis speech. The following day, he pleaded for another chance. He received it from Spielberg. Shaw did it flawlessly in a single take that time. Dreyfuss's condition didn't improve significantly. He felt stuck and experienced panic episodes. He was concerned that his career would die and the film would fail. Despite Roy Scheider's best efforts to remain impartial, the tension had an impact on everyone. According to Spielberg, the filming of Jaws was the most difficult he had ever done. Then an odd thing occurred. Spielberg had to use his imagination because the shark hardly functioned. He ceased to display it. Rather, he made a suggestion. He employed photos taken from the shark's perspective while submerged. He displayed barrels that were yellow and skimmed the surface. Before the audience ever saw anything, he let them hear it. John Williams filled the void. Williams composed a straightforward theme using only the notes E and F, repeating repeatedly. Spielberg laughed when he first heard it. Williams clarified that it was intended to feel primordial, like a pulse in the sea, but he still believed it was a joke. In order to manage the audience's level of fear, he recorded 47 variations of that tune. It was quiet and slow at times. At other times, it thumped loudly and quickly. That was all the shark required, even though it was only on screen for roughly 4 minutes. The enigma made it awful. It was startling when it eventually exploded out of the water close to the conclusion. The build-up had been successful. Spielberg had to create something more intelligent because of the malfunctioning machines. A couple of scenes followed. Jaws' first Alex Kintner killing scene was meant to be a memorable one. It was supposed to be brutal, horrifying, and terribly real. The crew assembled at Katama Bay on Martha's Vineyard on July 15, 1974. To shoot what they believed to be the film's most startling scene. In graphic detail, the scene would depict a little boy on a raft being attacked by a great white shark. However, the footage they took that day was so intense that it was never included in the final cut. Jeffrey Voorhees, age 11, portrayed Alex Kintner. He was floating peacefully on a yellow raft in the original plan, totally oblivious to the danger directly below. The enormous mechanical shark, which was designed to be 25 feet long and weigh more than 1.5 tons, would suddenly emerge from the water and make a lunge for him. Bruce was the name of the shark, and operating it required a crew of 15. It was made to leap so forcefully that each time it exploded from the bay, the camera team would be soaked with seawater. Alex was expected to be on the raft when it was crushed in the shark's mouth. Gallons of blood would be thrown into the water as Bruce would thrash furiously from side to side. An full system of compressed blood packs that would detonate at the right moment and shoot scarlet liquid skyward was created by the crew. To make it even more unsettling, the sea would turn red. A lifelike dummy of Alex had been constructed. It was made to disintegrate like a genuine body and featured movable limbs and a torso full with artificial organs. Bruce was designed to tear it apart. Legs would split apart. The flesh would float. Bodies would bob to the top. The shrieks would be frightening and piercing. The sound cruise layers of tearing tissue and breaking bones only made it worse. It was pure fuel for nightmares. This moment before the mayhem was captured in a single photograph. Decades passed before it was released. A rare black and white photograph by set photographer Calicord came to light in 2018. The date was July 15, 1974. Bruce is seen in the picture, his jaws agape, inches from the dummy on the raft at precisely 2:37 p.m. The little figure of the dummy appears frozen in fear as the shark's head fills the frame. The picture appeared frightful even without any color. It was easy to see the shark's rough skin, icy, glassy eyes, and unending rows of teeth. As though preparing for death, the dummy's arms were extended. It was eerie. The image was taken from a crew member who worked on the second unit's personal stockpile. Years later, it was discovered hidden in a box of lost souvenirs. Film specialists noticed its significance right away. It wasn't only a staged image. It was a preview of the most gory concept Spielberg never employed. Bruce, the machine that had caused mayhem during the shoot, was fully captured in the picture. It demonstrated the extent of the special effects team's progress. That monster had taken months for Bob Matty and his team to perfect. It shocked everyone, just as they had hoped. However, the scene was never shown in theaters. The crowd at a test showing in Dallas, Texas, on April 26, 1975, was unable to handle it. 13 people passed out. In the lobby, 2 people puked. A few of them ran out. It was excessive. For a PG rating, the scene was too dramatic. If left in, it would need to be graded R, according to the MPAA. That would restrict the number of tickets sold. That wasn't what Universal wanted. Spielberg was instructed to cut it. Spielberg concurred. He went on to say that people could be more frightened by their imagination than by blood. Leaving things invisible, in his opinion, made them more horrifying. Did not want to reveal everything at once. Not everyone agreed with his desire for the audience to feel the shark before they saw it. The man who spent weeks creating the original setting and building Bruce, Bob Matty, was frustrated. He believed the finest work done by his team had been concealed. He thought it demonstrated the actual terror of a shark attack. He wasn't mistaken either. The mechanical shark has a realistic appearance. It had a beastly gait. Like it meant to, it ripped through its target. Another decision made by Spielberg cemented the scene's demise. He didn't want the shark to be shown off so early in the film. He wished to conceal it for as long as he could. The tension increased as a result. It also served to hide Bruce's technical shortcomings. The shark frequently broke down. It resulted in costly repairs and protracted delays. Spielberg made sure that Bruce's arrival was powerful by slashing its early appearance. The final edit shows a very different variation. It depends on responses. It displays fear. It doesn't depict the attack, but it does show the water turning crimson. That decision was successful. Because of their imaginations rather than what they actually witnessed, people continue to rank it as one of the scariest scenes in movie history. There was also a scene of an estuary. The pond seemed to be at peace. Children were navigating small boats. Michael, the son of Chief Brody, was also out there. The water remained motionless. Nothing appeared to be harmful. Then it took place. A 25-foot great white shark unexpectedly entered the estuary. It was supposed to be secure here. The ocean was not open. The major beach wasn't there. It was a peaceful nook. What happened next was made worse by that. Boats capsized. Children cried out. Panic burst in the water. This time, Spielberg didn't require gloom. There was no sun. What was going on was visible to all. It seemed authentic because of that. It was frightening because of that. The camera alternated between close-ups and sweeping panoramas. The estuary was visible to you. Then you saw faces filled with horror. You witnessed defenseless individuals attempting to flee into the ocean. It was hectic, disorganized, and slow. The music of John Williams began quietly. Then the noise increased. Second by second, the anxiety increased. The shark then appeared. It was swift and enormous. The audience saw more than just a fin for the first time in the entire film. For a little minute, the entire body was visible, but it was sufficient. Spielberg held off on showing it for more than an hour. The moment exploded with power because of that weight. It became more frightening the less he displayed. Additionally, the majority of the shark remained hidden during this sequence. The rest was left to the imagination. The location for this scene was Martha's Vineyard's Joseph Sylvia State Beach. It continues to draw tourists. That further solidifies the worry. It's a real location with real water. Today, you might visit the place. Spielberg had more in mind at first. Another attack occurred immediately following the pandemonium in the estuary. After filming, it was cut. It was a violent scene. The kids were in jeopardy when a man in a paddle boat noticed them. In an attempt to assist, he paddled toward them. He lost his life because of that choice. Ted Grossman, a stuntman, filled the role. The film was shot on August 26, 1974. From underneath, the shark sprang up, crashed into the boat, and swallowed the man. Like a figure on a ship's bow, his body protruded. That's exactly what Spielberg used. Things worsened. The man was not immediately killed. He was awake. He threw up blood as the shark pulled him through the water. The water became red. For 10 seconds, the camera remained on him. Michael Brody stood a few feet away and saw the entire event. The entire event was shot by Spielberg. It was a terrifying scene. It was too much, even for Spielberg himself. He made a cut. It wasn't consistent with the remainder of the movie. The tone was completely inappropriate. Jaws gradually increased terror. Like a hammer, this scene struck. Instead of shock for the sake of shock, Spielberg sought tension. However, the video is available. It has also become a legend among many enthusiasts. When Universal Pictures took on Jaws, they did more than simply produce a film, they revolutionized the industry. Their marketing budget of $1.8 million was unprecedented in 1975. Although summer wasn't thought to be a popular season for films at the time, Universal recognized a great opportunity. Andrew Quain spearheaded a daring strategy to promote the movie. TV commercials ran throughout primetime shows 3 nights before to the movie's release. A shark emerged from the depths toward a woman swimming overhead in each advertisement. John Williams' eerie music played beneath it all. Those advertisements were everywhere. The blitz was full force. Never before had a movie been promoted so aggressively on TV. They continued after that. Jaws debuted on the same day in 464 cinemas across the United States on June 20, 1975. It was a novel concept to release it widely. Prior to then, movies were released one city at a time. However, they made it seem like a national occasion this time. And it was successful. In its first weekend of release, the movie brought in $7 million. That was huge for 1975. The bazaar was overrun with merchandise. Beach towels, t-shirts, and necklaces made of shark teeth were available. In fact, Universal and Bantam Books collaborated to reprint Peter Benchley's book under the movie's cover. Millions of copies of that book alone were sold. Following Jaws, this type of extreme push became the norm for blockbusters. Then came the boom at the box office. Jaws shattered The Godfather's record in a mere 78 days. In the US, it surpassed 260 million. Today, that amounts to almost $1.52 billion after accounting for inflation. That is more than Barbie or Top Gun Maverick have produced in the last few years. Was the first movie ever to reach 100 million rentals, meaning the studio received their share. And it only took 59 days to accomplish it. The movie continued to break records outside of the United States. In the end, it brought in more than $470 million globally. In just 1 month, Universal's parent company, MCA, saw a 22% increase in its stock price. More than 5 million copies of the tie-in book were sold. This wasn't merely a success. It was an earthquake in finance. Critics also praised it. It received 4 stars from Roger Ebert. A terrifying thriller with real characters, he said. The movie won 3 Oscars and had 4 nominations. The Best Sound, the Best Original Score, and the Greatest Film Editing. It came in at number 48 on the American Film Institute's list of the top 100 American movies of 2007. However, Jaws did more than break box office records. It gave rise to the summer blockbuster concept. Studios reserved their biggest pictures for the winter months prior to 1975. Overnight, that changed. The next gold rush was big-budget summer films. Studios began imitating the release method as well. They understood that launching a massive campaign on television and opening in hundreds of theaters could generate enormous early earnings. Opening weekends thus become the most crucial period of a movie's run. There was more from Steven Spielberg. He made the considerably riskier movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind after Jaws. It was about human amazement and aliens. Columbia Pictures was anxious. The spending plan has grown to $19.4 million. However, the movie earned nearly $288 million globally when it was released in 1977. The tale wasn't the only noteworthy aspect. $3.3 million was spent on special effects. About 1/5 of the entire budget. The final mothership scene pushed effects beyond what had been done before computer-generated imagery, and the aliens' 5-note musical number became ingrained in popular culture. On the human side, the Jaws cast also experienced life changes. The actor Roy Scheider, who portrayed Chief Brody, rose to fame. He co-starred with Dustin Hoffman and Laurence Olivier in the 1976 film Marathon Man. He then starred in All That Jazz in 1979. He was nominated for an Oscar for Best Actor for the role. The movie became a classic after earning $37 million. In 1978, Scheider made a comeback for Jaws 2. Despite receiving less accolades, it nonetheless made $208 million globally. He didn't play Brody after that. The next sequels were passed on to him. He continued to be active in the 1980s. He appeared in Choi Toi 10, The Year We Make Contact, a sci-fi follow-up. And then in 52 Pickup, a noir thriller. He played Captain Nathan Bridger in the underwater television series Sequest DSV in 1993. It provided him a significant television presence and ran for 3 seasons. Scheider acted in over 60 movies and numerous television shows over his lifetime. He refused to be defined by Jaws. He persisted in exploring new roles, genres, and difficulties. The rise of Hooper's actor Richard Dreyfuss was as significant. He starred in The Goodbye Girl in 1977. He took home the Oscar for Best Actor. At the time, he was the youngest person to get that honor, being 30 years and 125 days old. He gave strong results after that. He starred in the 1981 film Whose Life Is It Anyway?, which told the story of a paraplegic artist who sought suicide. It brought about $27 million and nominated him for another Golden Globe. He played the adult narrator in the 1986 film Stand By Me. Despite having little on-screen time, his voice provided the film its soul. In addition to earning $52 million, the screenplay was nominated for an Oscar. Dreyfuss and Spielberg worked together again in 1989 on the movie Always. Globally, it earned $74 million. He then co-starred with Bill Murray in the popular comedy What About Bob in 1991. Over $63 million was earned by that one. He was nominated for another Oscar in 1995 for Mr. Holland's Opus. That movie brought in $106 million and solidified Dreyfuss's status as one of Hollywood's greatest. He received 17 victories and 26 nominations for accolades over his career. He appeared in more than 90 TV series and movies. He demonstrated repeatedly that he wasn't a one-hit wonder by switching between humor and drama with ease. The journey taken by Quint's actor Robert Shaw was shorter. However, he left a trail of noteworthy parts in the years following Jaws. He co-starred with Audrey Hepburn and Sean Connery as the Sheriff of Nottingham and Robin and Marion in 1976. Received plaudits for its sophisticated storytelling and made $8.5 million. Shaw's portrayal of the antagonist was nuanced and sinister. He starred in 2 major motion pictures in 1977. In the first, he portrayed a Mossad operative preventing a terrorist attack during the Super Bowl on Black Sunday. The total revenue was $15.8 million. The Deep, which was based on a Peter Benchley book, was the second. In Bermuda, Shaw played a treasure seeker. In addition to earning $47 million, the film maintained his reputation as a leading underwater thriller. Force from Navarone, a war sequel that made $7.1 million in 1978, was his last finished movie. Shaw passed away from a heart attack while driving in Ireland a few months later. He was 51. At the time, he was filming Avalanche Express. Voice dubbing and stand-ins were used to finish the film, but the outcome was disappointing. Shaw's influence on screen remained unquestionable even in his later years. His performance in Jaws is one of the most recognizable in movie history. His passing created a void in the film industry that never truly went away. The Jaws actors developed enduring connections in spite of the difficulties on site. Richard Dreyfuss and Roy Scheider remained friends. According to Dreyfuss, they ate supper together once a month for years. Following Scheider's death in 2008, Dreyfuss delivered a heartfelt eulogy. The cast gathered on anniversaries and other noteworthy occasions over the years. They celebrated their 30th anniversary together in Martha's Vineyard in 2005. 5,000 fans gathered to see the movie again at the location where it was filmed. They got together once more for the Blu-ray release in 2012. When Dreyfuss first read the script, he quipped that he had assumed the movie would be a disaster, but it turned out to be a success. Jaws wasn't merely a success. It was a historical event that permanently altered the lives of all those concerned.